All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. With me today, I have Devin Jones, personal trainer, sports and strength and conditioning coach. I've had the opportunity to work with him for quite some time. He's done some of the preseason conditioning work for my McLean High School team. He's also been a lifesaver for me during a quarantine, coming out when he was in town, working out with me in person, and now all virtual. So I'm glad he could share a little bit with us about how to keep our body strong. So before we get started with the questions I have lined up, I'm going to have him tell us a little bit about himself.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I grew up local. Well, not anymore. I live in Spain now, but I grew up in Vienna, McLean, Ashburn, Leesburg. And if you're from the area, basically off Route 7. And I live in Spain now. We just moved here in August, so it's been quite a crazy year, as it has for many, across the world. But I got in the industry about 2009. I was working at a chiropractor's office, and they needed a fitness segment, and so I started there while I was actually still in school for personal training, the whole nine. And then I went over to sport and health, and so that's when I kind of got into the explosive performance world, a little bit less of the general public, but more into the athletic world. About 2011, and so I started as an EP coach, and then rose through the ranks into the EP director role. I was in charge of training teams, organizations, and educating interns, and kind of developing the whole program. And so across all of that, I've had the opportunity to work with athletes as young as 7 years old. You can't really do a lot with them in a specific kind of a way, but they have the energy like all day, and it's really fun to train little kids. And then all the way up to college and pro, so I've had the opportunity with soccer, lacrosse, basketball, football. We've had some, Redskins, NFL players, hockey, gymnastics, bodybuilding. So really it just comes down to learning a little bit of the key aspects or segments of the discipline of the sport. And then applying that to the, anatomy, the science of training and strength and conditioning. But I've had clients that are up to in their 80s that have Parkinson's. So it's, there's really no limit with a little research and, due diligence, then you can really get some progress. So that's really, brings me up to today. So, as far as experience.
Awesome. So I have a list of questions lined up for Devin, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them. There's a Q&A section that will send me your question, but also a chat where I can see them and make sure we get those answered. But first question I have, what's the top 2 or 3 injuries that you see most common in female athletes, and what are some exercises or workouts that they can do to prevent those injuries?
Cool. So, really, there's a lot of them, but as far as the top few, the most common ones, jumper's knee, it's very common. A lot of times Achilles tendon, plantar fasciitis. But, the number one is, and across multiple sports, really all sports, is and youth female athletes, is the ACL injuries, whether it's a partial tear or a full tear, and all the other things that come along with it, with meniscus, LCL, PCL, really that ACL. And really, as far as the strength and conditioning side, working on how the body works, getting into the exercises, but kind of the whys behind it is you need hip and ankle mobility. A lot of times with athletes, they're really springy, elastic, and their ankles are stiff and then muscles stiff, which it should be to be springy and have that quick first step. But a lot of times if the mobility isn't addressed, then it can lead to instability of the rest of the body. So that puts the knee in a vulnerable state. So just keeping it general, really the active mobility is going to save you more immediately than the strength stuff, as far as keeping your body mobile. Stretches like World's Greatest Stretch, if you haven't heard of that, can show you in a second, and keeping your ankles mobile, like there. So going from the mobility into the strength, but I'll just show you the mobility exercises real quick. So just getting from a standard, let me lower the camera here. So from a hands and knees position, right, keeping both legs straight, your goal is to bring one foot up outside your hands. Okay, we're trying to get full length and full stride out of the lower body, and lowering our inside arm towards the floor, as low as you can reach without collapsing or breaking your form. Taking the same arm up through the ceiling, again, holding that form through the rest of the body. And then grabbing the ground into what we call a kicker stretch, lengthening as much as you're able through the front and back leg, dropping the heel. Okay, and then you would repeat that same thing on both sides, about 3 to 5 reps. But making sure that you're doing these consistently is going to be the biggest key to gaining that control and that total body mobility. And then going through calf stretches, I can show these later if anybody has questions, but going right into some of the strength exercises is working on single leg stability, starting from the easiest, simplest, and most doable one up the chain to a more complex version. So step downs or single leg around the world, right? So if you have a stair at home, you can easily hop on the bottom stair and do these in any of the directions that we're going to do now. Or if you have cones and you'd rather do it this version, you can knock this out as well. So the goal is that you have 3 targets, one in front of you, one to the side, and one behind you. So the goal is that you find your balance on one leg, and without letting your tripod, which is the heel, pinky, and big toe, right? Without letting your tripod leave the ground, your goal is to then reach as far forward with your heel as possible, yeah, not relying on it, but rather just to tap. Return, again, keeping that tripod, reach as far out to the side as you can. Nice light tap. And then the same thing backwards. Nice light tap. Okay, notice my weight is always over my tripod, trying to get as far as I can each direction, right, around the world. So those 2 movements to start off with, the around the world. Then you would progress up to what we want is true single leg strength, right? So you can progress up the chain. There's plenty of variations, but one, for example, is going to take us through full range of motion in my hip and my knee. Here, this is my home gym as well. Your goal is to position yourself where you're now in front of a stable surface. Chair is great, something that gets you to 90 degrees. Again, find that tripod, center your weight over that foot. Your goal is to control your way down. Okay, ride down like a feather. This foot's always off the floor. And then stand. Your goal is to demonstrate how well you can control that downward phase. And then can you then stand right back up. So that's the next variation. Goal is to do these about 8 to 10 reps with control. Then you would take it on to what we call a B stance squat, which is a single leg squat. If you've heard of a pistol squat or things like that in the world of CrossFit and other areas, gymnastics. But we're going to work on this just for the strength benefits rather than working on a lot of the creativity of the move or the prerequisites of the move. So again, find your tripod. You're going to take the non-working foot, kind of like a ballet move. You're going to point your toe into the ground, keeping your weight over that one leg. And your goal is now to sit on your calf, right? All that means is when you get down, you're focusing on keeping your weight over this leg. This leg is out here for stability. And then stand through, right? Again, this foot's out to the side, getting all the way down to my calf, and then back up, right? Again, this takes a lot more of what we talked about, ankle mobility and hand mobility to get that low. So I would recommend starting on the chair, find out how much stability you have, how much strength you have on each side. You can even stay on the chair, grab water bottles, a backpack, and even just live in that progression of the movement for a while until you get to where you feel comfortable enough, where 8 reps is no longer challenging, then you can progress the movement. But I would stay at a lower regression of the movement, just simply adding some difficulty before you then progress up into a more difficult, more technical movement. And then you go through, we have this rear foot elevated or split squats. Again, people can lift their body weight or more on one leg. But the goal is to demonstrate true unilateral strength or single leg strength. And as far as prevention of injury to that leg, right? So those are a couple there.
Okay.
Yep.
Next question. So actually a question came in around the stability ball that looks like you're sitting on right now.
Yeah.
Is that
Well, if
something,
I'm not sitting on the chair in my room, I'm sitting on a ball, right?
right? Is that something you suggest when sitting at a desk for a long period of time?
Yeah, so I kind of alternate. So I have both, right? Obviously, they serve their purposes, but I sit on the ball pretty much 95% of the day. At first, in the 90s, early 2000s, it was like, oh, it activates your core much more. It does all these wonderful things. But if you're sitting in front of a computer reading whatever, you can still find yourself slouching, right? So a lot of the things is like, okay, what am I actually doing to train my body to have good posture? And then the ball is an added benefit, right? But I wouldn't look at the ball as like the ball is going to do this magical thing, right? And just be bouncing around, right? It's really more of, am I training my body to have posture? And so I can do that subconsciously. Does my body subconsciously have good posture? And then the ball is an added benefit. But I would recommend it nonetheless, but just to give you a reason.
Great. Next question. In addition to working on their sport, so their practice, skill training that they're doing with like a ball handling coach or a shooting coach, how frequently do you recommend female players do like non-sport specific training?
So going sport more specific into that, I definitely would recommend in season 1 to 2 times per week minimum. And what you do in those sessions is obviously a longer conversation, but 1 to 2 weeks, 1 to 2 times per week minimum. And if you're off season, you definitely want 2 to 4 times a week. But again, what your schedule can handle, what your body can handle, the plan should be specific to your schedule. So it's not like you're going to feel like you're dying each of those workouts, but at least having a plan where your body can adapt and you have the frequency to do so.
Okay. And you may have like answered this with your initial answer right there, but with AAU basketball, we usually have 2 basketball practices a week and maybe 2 to 4 games every other weekend. How would you recommend an athlete that has that type of schedule kind of fill in the rest of their time in the week? So
Like you said, kind of going, it's like a kind of a, the same other side of the token, or same side of the token. The goal is that you want to diversify your training. Research has shown that, the more diverse my training can be, is the less likely that I'll be injured. If I can diverse my motor skill development, then I'm more likely to reduce my injury risk factors. So the goal is that if you've already completed your weekly schedule of training games, then you want to diversify your training. And the best way to do that is specific, focused, isolated, integrative neuromuscular training, right? So really that just means general strength and conditioning, what we call the GPP phase, or general physical preparedness, is really for the youth athlete, really for any athlete. But the goal is that outside of your sport-specific training, you definitely want to get in that motor skill development training, because that's going to help you in the long run be prepared for injury risk situations, right?
gotcha. So for athletes that are looking to improve their lateral quickness for defense, what are the top 3 exercises you'd recommend that they do and how frequently?
Again, so like if I was in the gym, I had an athlete in front of me, this plan would take me 6 months, right? Or if they told me I have 8 weeks, okay, we're going to start at the bottom level and work your way up, right? But things you can kind of get started with today, and you can do at home, etc. There are a lot of things that entail hip strength and leg strength, right? And hip and core, right? So everything's connected. So you want to start off with, these are kind of all intertwined. So as far as injury prevention at the same time, the goal is first, right, find a wall that you can lay against. And Crystal knows these very well. These are clamshells. Okay, let me see if I can fix my camera. Sorry about that. So when I'm in this position, I want to have my back against the wall, simply to remind me to keep a neutral spine and neutral hips. Okay, so my lower back is against the wall. Hips and knees are both 90 degrees. I want to treat my heels like a door hinge. So from this position, my goal is to raise my hip as high, my upper leg as high as I can, and then control it back down, and then raise it up. With these, the goal is to go until fatigue, or until you feel like, okay, I hit a wall and I can't do quality reps anymore, right? We're looking at the 15 to 20 range, right? Once I get strong enough to maintain that, then I would want to progress into I have resistance. If I have a partner or a family member can add resistance to my leg. And then if you don't have that, or you want to move on, then you can start adding a band. Wouldn't do that first, but then you can progress to it, right? So getting that hip strength, it may not look like basketball or athletic performance, but the goal is we're training the body and preparing it for any situation. And then once you get on the court, you'll notice that strength carries over much better than if you were to only do, right, your sports specific moves. Then you would go onto the back. Same thing, you bring one leg into your chest, right? Your goal is to keep both knees 90 degrees, digging your heel into the ground, driving up into the sky, and then back down, drive up into the sky, back down. What I want to notice is a straight line from my shoulder through the hip to the knee, and then back down, okay? We're working on, again, it's still hip strength, but we're going for more on the backside or posterior chain, right? Getting some strength into the hip. Then I would go sideline, right? Laying on the floor first, point your toe into the ground as if you're dipping it in a bucket of paint, and I'm raising that leg up, back down, up, back down, same tempo, slow on the way down, full range, back up, back down. We don't want to turn the toe open, but rather point the toe to the floor, up, back down. If you found that progress from that 15 to 20 rep range, you would come up into a nice straight line side plank, raise up, back down, same style, raise up, back down. So working on the ground-based movements will translate much faster and better because you have to stabilize your spine and you have to integrate the rest of the muscles. So the goal is to get those done first. Then you would get into what we call reactive push steps. Again, working on covering ground laterally. So when I start in an athletic stance, my goal is to get my center of mass as far this way as possible with as little steps onto the ground. So in one move, I want to take my outside leg, push myself back to another base position, push back to base. Once I can cover more ground and then still return, right? I'm going to try to then add a little bit more challenge. So if I have a partner, I can add some reaction to it. I can try to do it on command, or if I'm playing defense, try to work on it when you're doing one-on-one. But taking those moves from the ground and then applying it, right, onto an actual movement is going to definitely help you.
Great. So next question I have is around water. So we all know drinking a lot of water is important, but how much water should an athlete drink a day?
So the goal is that really what your body size, stature, physicality, you want to aim for about 50% of your body weight in ounces. So that's going to get you in the right zone. And let's say that's just a normal day. Well, let's say you have practice or a game. Every 15 minutes of vigorous exercise, you want about 4 ounces. So in an hour, that equals like 16-ounce bottle of water, easy to carry along with you. And then if you could add some nutrients into it as well, then you'd be better off. But yeah, about 50% of your body weight in ounces.
Okay. So another question came in around push-ups. So you make me do a ton of push-ups, and we sometimes make our players do a ton of push-ups as a consequence. So 2 questions. 1, what's the benefit of doing push-ups? And then 2, for a lot of female athletes, they struggle with doing push-ups in the proper form. Like what things can they do to improve their push-ups?
Great question. So yeah, the push-up really is less about the strength of the actual push, but rather, can you stabilize your spine through movement, right? So your body is horizontal, gravity is vertical, right? So that makes my center of mass is now my hips and my belly button area. So if my waist or my body was a bridge, right, the weakest point is the middle. So that's the same thing in the push-up. It's a moving plank. So obviously you need arm strength, you need upper body strength. That's a given. But can you also apply that with core stability, right? So, and actually that's one of the things that we're going to get to, a test to see where your core strength is at by means of the push-up, not necessarily your push-up strength, but can I stabilize my spine? I want to take a prone position, take your thumbs, right, at eyebrow height or chin height. Eyebrows a little more difficult. We'll start at your chin. For females here, we're going to start at chin height and draw a box, right? Not a rainbow, but a box to shoulder width. Toes into the ground, and in one movement, can I drive my body up to the ceiling? The goal is that it's a straight line, not a curvy line, okay? So we can obviously see the difference there, right? If I can't do the chin version, then I would bring my thumbs to my armpits and then try it there, right? If you can't do any of it, you can't even lift your body off the ground, no shame in that. The goal is then, can we find a doable and challenging variation to the movement, right? So instead of what's classically named as a girl push-up, which I don't like calling it that because really exercise is for everybody, the goal is that this actually decreases how much weight's on my hands so much that I'm not really eliciting a strength response in the exercise. So what I want to actually do is keeping my body straight, getting those same benefits in core strength. Your goal is to take an elevated surface, even though it looks like an incline, it's actually a decline push-up. My goal is to then find a surface that I can really hold on to, right? Hands are in the same position. If I can do a push-up right away, down, up, then perfect. If I still struggle and I feel like I can't get to the chair, that's fine. Don't think about pushing up. Just come down to the chair. Everybody can lay down and then bend your knees and then reset. The goal is that we're building strength in the lengthening portion of the muscle, which is going to transfer to the other side of the push-up. So the goal is, again, work on the eccentric portion, right? If I need a higher surface, use a higher surface. Once I can get down and up, after only working the downward portion, then I take it back to the floor. The goal is that I control it. If you kind of crash, you got to crash. Down. Now you're able to bend your knees. But at least I've gotten the strength out of a total body rep under control. And then I simply just reset. Okay? But one final thing is, really you want to keep your elbows down. I see a lot of push-ups where I'm doing elbow push-ups or nose dives, right? A lot of this, really you're losing benefit of the push-up and causing potential harm to your shoulders and joints on top of it. So really the goal is to work with the progression you can handle, but that's still challenging, that will still benefit you. Does that answer?
Yep, that's great. So I have two more questions for Devin. So if you have any questions for those that are attending, just go ahead and type it into the Q&A section. I'll make sure we get to those.
Yep.
So my next question for players that are looking to improve their vertical, here at PV Thunder, we love to try to block shots, but sometimes we're not jumping high enough. What are the top two exercises you'd recommend for them to do to improve their vertical?
So kind of the same intro to all of my answers, really, like if I had an athlete walk in and say, I want to increase my vertical, right? How much can we realistically increase it and in how much time? If you say I have a game at the end of the month and I want to jump over my opponent, I'm going to say, okay, we're going to train for that, but I wouldn't expect that necessarily result. But if you say we have 3 months, okay, now we can make some actual progress or change. So really the goal is that we have a progression of what the body can handle and then how fast it can adapt. So you would really want to start off with what's as simple as jump rope. And I know that sounds like recess in kindergarten, but what we're working on, what's the first thing to touch the floor? Is your foot and your lower leg. The quicker I can get off the ground and create a rapid response off the floor, then the rest of the body is going to do the same thing. So if my hips is where all my strength comes from, and I have to put all that power into the ground, if you guys are in science class or whatever it is, you know that all that force we put into the ground has to come back up into my body, almost like a guitar string. So the stronger I can get my ankle and more reactive I can get it, the more I can utilize the force that I put into the ground. So not just limiting at jump ropes, you would take those jump ropes, which is more of a 1-inch jump off the floor, then you would take it to where we're going for power. And I'll show you here from the ceiling. So again, working on the actual ankle movement, I'm going to show you down. Sorry about the angles here. Getting used to the zoom here. So the goal is I'm actually pulling my toes up and then working on getting off the ground as high as I can. We're looking at 5 to 10 reps of max effort. Okay, so I progress from a jump rope, once I've been able to establish endurance in that movement, to a more strength-based movement. Then we're adding some variations to it. Now I'm going to be doing a split where I get my legs in a split stance, right? So I'm modifying it to where I'm getting on one leg, etc., adding some coordination to it. Then I would progress to a low step or a low box. Now I'm getting more of a step and power jump. So if I were to get, you can use the bottom step in your home, whatever you have. But the goal is that you elevate the front leg, and now we're really getting up, right? You get the idea, is getting up as high as you can off one, and we're going, again, the same focus, this quickness off the floor, right? We're getting power, okay? Then we would, after getting through these progressions, we go through our traditional plyometrics on 2 legs, right? We know athletes work on 1 leg, but we're gonna develop some power on 2 once we've established balance. Is a paused squat jump. So if I'm going for a jump ball, that's how I wanna stand with no movement. It's gonna be straight up and then stick. Straight up and then stick, working on landing, all from a pause. Then you would go from a standing position, standing, and then pause, and you get the idea of going through those reps. So it's all about the progression, but working on lower leg strength, and then learning how to first decelerate and load, and then jump out.
Great. So last question I have here is more so just around your virtual trainings. We're all moving to a world that's more virtual. Can you just give us an idea of how you organize your virtual trainings, what someone should expect if they were reaching out to you to get trained?
So yeah, the virtual world, at first I was obviously, just skeptical as everybody else, but this coronavirus forced everybody in ways they didn't see coming. So honestly, at first, I'm a very hands-on person. I like the energy of being there. I love coaching groups of athletes and people, so I feed off that. So it's been an adjustment, but I feel like a lot of the same things can be done because I relied on cueing and coaching versus it being like, you go to a body pump class, you go to Zumba where you may be the person in the room. The trainer on the stage never sees the person in the back of the room, so you're not getting coached. So a lot of times people feel like virtual training will be that same way or kind of like run down or less than. But what I've seen, and hopefully my clients agree, is that it's going to be just as hands-on. I'm watching every move, and the workouts will be as intense as you can handle. One, based off the equipment you have and the space, but really that's not even an issue. So it's formatted just exactly how I would train a person. Really, it's just a matter of if you have equipment, then even better. And then it's by the hour, it's one-on-one. I'm watching every move you do, and I program not only the workouts, but nutrition as well. So, even though it's not the same, I try to make it the same.
Gotcha. Great. Well, it does not look like we have any other questions. So thank you for joining us. I will be following up with you later with the recording and everything else. Cool. But thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys. I hope the season goes well after the break.
Yep. And I will see you on Wednesday virtually.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.